more about the SBIR program.
Awesome. Thanks, Rihanna. And let's see. I'm going to load up my briefing as well. If you cannot see my briefing, please let me know. So thank you to SC Competes. Thank you to the Palmetto Tech Bridge for allowing me to give everyone here a brief overview about the SBIR STTR program. I'm walking into this brief, or starting out this brief, assuming that folks here do not know about this program. So it gives you a very good high-level view of what it is, and hopefully leads you with a little bit of a thirst for hunger for some more information, which we do have some resources available to you if you'd like more information about the program. Okay, so just as Rihanna had mentioned, Shadi Zoom, I am one of the Navy Command's SBIR STTR program manager. That is an old photo of me that needs to be updated, but luckily I've lost weight since then. So it's a good reminder of my weight loss journey. But I've been in the program for about 7 years, or at least 7 years now. Have learned quite a bit and have much to share with folks here. Okay, I'm on slide 3 of my briefing, which covers what is the program, if for those that are completely brand new and is not aware of it. So SBIR stands for Small Business Innovation Research. It has a sister program called Small Business Technology Transfer, or STTR. SBIR and STTR are both programs that provide seed funding to small businesses to help address government needs, but also help promote commercialization. Navy falls under Department of Defense. You'll see a little bit of an organizational chart that I have a little bit later on, but we are the DoD under where Navy falls under. It's not just the only department or government agency, I should say, that participates in this program. You can find Department of Transportation, Department of Agriculture. Basically, there are a lot of other departments, or I should say government entities that participate in this program. There is this notion, though, that the program has 2 different purposes. The first is that it helps address some of the needs that the government is looking for, but this other part is to promote commercialization. The program is managed or orchestrated by the Small Business Administration, or SBA. So there is this inherent trait that the program is really also meant to help grow small businesses. And you'll see every single one of the projects, if you peruse the portfolio that Navy or some of the other sister services do with SBIRs, you'll notice that there's an aspect to it where you're not locked into just doing work with the government. You have the ability to commercialize that outside of the government. So it's really meant to also help you grow as a small business. A fun fact, Qualcomm and 23andMe, if you've heard of those common names that are today, actually got their start using the SBIR STTR program. So it's a good way of kind of gauging and seeing that those companies have flourished, of course, and have had their starts from here. The only difference between SBIR and STTR comes down to partnerships. It's the same funding, same schedule, but for SBIR, a small business, the main recipient of the funding, they have the option to subcontract the work if they so choose. We've seen cases where they subcontract the work to a large business or even to a university. But for STTR, there is a required partnership that a small business has to do at least 40% of the work, and a research institution has to do at least 30% of the work. So that's the main difference between the 2 programs. They're both competitive 3-phase programs, which I will have a slide later on that kind of shares what those phased schedule is for the programs. There have been a couple questions actually that I got when I was perusing the questions that were submitted through the registration. One of which is like, what classifies us as a small business, or better yet, if I'm eligible to apply or I'm a company, what makes me eligible to participate in this program? And this slide kind of answers that. In order to participate in the program, the small business must be for profit. They must be owned and operated in the United States and have 500 or less employees. The work that is performed under the program must also be performed in the United States, and the work must be research and development. This last bullet is kind of important. The program is meant to create new technologies and new products It's not a quote procurement program where if you have an off-the-shelf product, it's not meant for us to just purchase it. It's really meant for us to start from a very early maturity level, fund a small business to help create something that is brand new, and at the very end of the program, help us transition it into an actual application that our command engages in. Okay, why engage in this program from a small business perspective? It's a great portfolio builder. We've kind of, just as I mentioned before, with some of the notable names that are out there, participating in this program does build your credibility. So if you are a small business looking to get your start into the government workforce, to get more government work, this is a great opportunity, a great program to build your credibility. I do have a slide that talks about data rights. And so as a small business, you are afforded certain data rights, and that's a good benefit to participating in this program. And then we'll talk about this a little bit later, but any follow-on awards or awards that we make after you've received your first SBIR STTR award can be quoted as non-competitive. And we'll talk a little bit about that, but this is also a benefit if you are a small business that have already engaged in the program before. On our government side, and for those that are government that might be on this phone call, or sorry, webinar, we kind of think of SBIR and STTR as like an investment program. I like to think of it as like a savings account. We reserve a certain pot of funding to help us think ahead and think about what solutions we are looking for in the next 5 to 7 years. And we issue competitive announcements through this program to help address those mid to long-term capability gaps. I mentioned that Department of Defense isn't the only department or government entity that participates in this program. This shows here there are 11 different agencies that participate in SBIR STTR. Excuse me. The DoD is one of them. Navy falls under that. As long as our sister services too, like the Army and Air Force, also are under DoD. But you can see there's a lot of different resources or a lot of different agencies with their own respective needs that they're looking for that you can also participate in as well. The little circle on the bottom right shows those that participate in the STTR program, and those that do not have all of these participate in SBIR, but those that have a circle on the bottom right are those that only participate in STTR. Okay, this shows the different Navy entities that participate for Navy. So we call these commands, if you will. We have about 8 different that participate in the SBIR STTR program. They each have their own SBIR STTR budget, their own funding pot. And there are people just like me who are program managers for the commands that manage the entire process. So each of these 8 different commands will actually post competitive announcements, or what we call topics, that you as a small business can review, see what we're looking for, and apply to. I've included a hyperlink at the very bottom of this. You can directly reach out to either any one of us or my counterparts, I should say, in the other commands. And our information and our emails are listed on that website. Okay, so this is just a little briefer on how we get our funding for the program. So I think a lot of misconception is that it's an outside source of pot of funding. It's not. Basically, it's a tax on our own budgets. So if you're familiar with the structure of acquisition and those specific programs and their research and development budgets, we get taxed for that in support of SBIR STTR. And just very trivial, but for SBIR, it's a 3.2% tax for any of our programs that exceed $100 million over across a 5-year period. And for STTR, if we exceed $1 billion, we are taxed 0.45% for STTR. Okay, slide 9, this talks about some topics. So in order to get started with the program, and if you are a small business looking to get your start, the first sort of line or the first point to get started is to review our topics. So 3 times a year, we post in what we call a broad agency announcement. And it's on the DoD SBIR STTR.mil website. But we post 3 times a year topics. And these topics basically express what our command is looking for. We get a lot of questions at roadshows that basically say, is there a pattern in what we're looking for? Honestly, it comes down to priorities and what our offices within our command touch base with the fleet and are assessing what are their emerging priorities in that 5 to 7 year timeframe that I talked about, and they're issuing topics based on those. So it's very hard to predict what our topics are because it varies, as well as the number of topics also vary. But you are more than welcome to subscribe to the DoD SBIR STTR website, which allows you to get immediate notification when we do post topics, which is typically around April, August, and November timeframe. The dates obviously range, but subscribing to that mailing list there will make sure that you get it in a timely fashion. If you want to go directly to see those that are active right now, the third bullet here shows or links you to where our topics are posted. We actually have a topic cycle across Navy that just actually got released starting yesterday. NAVWARD did not participate in that topic cycle, but some of my sister syscoms or commands have participated in it. And we have about 96 topics that are out there right now that you can peruse and check out. If you do apply to one of the topics that are listed there, we usually will conduct our evaluations or basically review your proposals and see whether or not we would like to move forward with an award within 90 days from the close date of that topic announcement. And then we make awards within 180 days from that close date. If you take a look at some of our topics, we have some important dates that you should be aware of. They're pre-release, open, and close. Right now, we're in a pre-release period for this current cycle. Basically, it's like the first time that you will see our topic, and that kickstarts a 30-day period between the pre-release and open date. I would tell you that if there's one single thing that you'd want to take away from this briefing, it would be that if you're a small business and you're interested in doing some of our work, or actually applying, take advantage of the period between the pre-release and the open date. It's a 30-day period where you as a small business can intimately talk to our topic authors, those that actually wrote the topic, and ask them clarifying questions and to gauge whether or not that topic is something that's relevant to what your company is doing or looking for or engaged in, and to see if your proposed solution might be a fit. So that is a very important 30-day period that I would highly recommend. We can have conversations with you by phone or by email, but take advantage of that period more than anything. Between the open and the close date is when you actually can submit your proposal. It's also a 30-day period. And another, I guess, advice, excuse me, is that don't wait to the last minute to actually submit your proposals. There is a hard cutoff date, and we don't accept proposals beyond that. Also, be sure to read the broad agency announcement in its entirety. It is a very lofty document, I would say, but there are very key elements in there that shows you how to craft your proposal, even to a point that it's very trivial, just to make sure we are consistent in our submissions in terms of font size or whether it's page limits, because a lot of companies do get rejected if they don't meet the criteria there, but we explicitly put that out there. Okay, I talked about that these programs are competitive. So once we actually submit a topic that gets posted, and you are a company and you submit, if we select you to actually move forward and receive funding to address the topic that we post in a broad agency announcement, we kickstart the effort with what we call a phase 1 award. So we don't give all the funding all at once for you to build a solution for us. We like to survey multiple small businesses first, then make a further decision to actually see who we'd like to fund to actually create and build something for us. So the first phase of the program, we issue between 2 to 4 awards per topic. So that's about a 6 to 12 month period that's shown here. You can see by the dollar amount, it's just enough that gives the government enough information to see whether or not the solution that you are proposing in response to our topic is feasible and meets the topic that we're looking for. So we issue about 2 to 4 phase 1 awards. Those companies that do receive the phase 1 awards then have an opportunity to further compete for phase 2, which, as you see here, gives us a substantial amount of funding to help develop a prototype based on the feasibility study that they accomplished in phase 1. So just to review, we issue a topic that then goes, we usually issue 2 to 4 phase 1 awards. And then from those phase 1 awards, we go to 1 phase 2 award itself. Now, I know phase 3 is a sort of a part of the SBIR process, but it's the one part of the state in the program where it's not funded by SBIR. I call this the success story. Going back to what Rihanna's slide shows, the valley of death, the phase 3 is, or the moment in time between phase 2 and phase 3 is the quote valley of death. But once a company has achieved the phase 3, that's the crossing to the finish line, the over the hump of the valley of death. So a phase 3 award, if let's suppose you are a company that's received a phase 1 and a phase 2 award, the government can then make a sole source award to you as a small business to help to further invest into your product or technology, that prototype that has been developed, and then take that further in order to transition it and have it be used in our respective applications. The beauty about the program is that the phase 3 or the sole source contract, if you do receive one as a small business, is very flexible. The contract type is very, there's not a prescribed contract type. You can have, it's an unlimited duration. You can have an unlimited amount of funding. So there's not really a ceiling that's attached to it. And we can fund it using any appropriation or color of funding, we like to call it, to fund the sole source contract that is the phase 3. One other thing to kind of keep in mind is that, and I'm sorry, I'm going to go back one slide because there's one point I forgot to make. You see here that it goes from phase 1 to phase 2 to phase 3. If you are a small business and you've received a phase 1, we can actually go to a phase 3 without having to go through the phase 2 process. And I'll talk a little bit about this, but it's one of the benefits about the program is that if you have or you've been awarded a prior SBIR STTR award, keep those as in your repository because any other agency can pick it up. They can pick it up for phase 2 and then even to a phase 3. So I'll talk a little bit about that and about 2 slides more. But before I go into talking about that, I do want to say that this process that you see here, these phases that you see here, there are certain shortcuts to the program that can be made. It doesn't have to go from a topic to phase 1 to phase 2. The first one is called a direct to phase 2, which you might have heard from some of our sister agencies. And there's another one called a reach back or subsequent phase 2. So a direct to phase 2 is a type of topic that we post. So traditionally, all of our topics lead into a phase 1 awards. We do have one that actually we just concluded with now where we posted a topic in a broad agency announcement, but we've indicated that if you are a company and you are applying to that topic, that you are going to go directly to a phase 2 rather than going to phase 1 then phase 2. What that basically means is that we would assume that since phase 1 is a feasibility study, we would already assume that you as a small business has already did some legwork that did phase 1 type work before. So typically a direct to phase 2 topic, when we issue it into a broad agency announcement, they're topics that we feel like the industry has already made some headway in there, and that we don't necessarily need a feasibility study in there. We would assume that you've already done some type of work like that using your own internal research and development dollars. And slide 14 shows the other opportunity, which I would say is probably especially for Navware, accounts for about 60% of our portfolio. It's an opportunity where if you have been awarded an SBIR or STTR award by any other agency, it doesn't necessarily have to be Navy. It could be Air Force or Army. It could be even outside of DoD. For example, like Department of Homeland Security. If you've been awarded a SBIR or STTR award, any other agency can pick it up for a follow-on award. And I think a lot of companies don't know about this opportunity. It's in the SBIR policy directive that is issued by the Small Business Administration. And when I said about 60% of our portfolio within Navware covers this, usually a lot of times it's faster for us to identify work that's already been done using the SBIR process rather than having for us in the government or at Navware to issue a brand new topic, especially with Navware's focus that we are in the cyber domain capability areas. So a lot of the work that is performed there, of course, is rapidly growing. And so we don't necessarily, we think that when we issue a brand new topic, it doesn't necessarily make sense, or we think that those capabilities developed in the 5 to 7 year timeframe might be obsolete. So we usually will ask companies if they do come to us to tell us what your prior SBIR awards are, even if it's outside of Navy, because it gives you an opportunity to go directly to a phase 2 without competition. The only stipulation or condition I would say is that a company may only receive up to 2 phase 2 awards per topic. Okay, data rights. I'm almost done. So I have a whole nother briefing related to data rights, but this is kind of a very, very high level summary. Excuse me. But basically, it shares with you that you as a small business do get afforded certain data rights to help protect your intellectual property. And it's a 20-year non-renewable period, meaning that the first time, or I should say the start date of your first SBIR award, let's suppose that we issue a topic and you are a company, you've received your first phase 1 award with us, it starts the clock of a 20-year period, where during that 20-year period, the government has limited and restricted rights to any data that is developed under the SBIR company. So it's limited data rights with respect to anything that will be called as technical data, things like documents and things like that, and then restricted rights for any software that is developed. And notice that this is data, not hardware. And this is my last slide, which is some of the tips, or I would say strategies that we like to share with small businesses. We do get quite a bit of questions to us that, especially from companies that I think don't see a topic that they best fit. And they ask us, well, can I help shape a topic? And we say, no, unfortunately, simply because SBIR and STTR are meant to be competitive. So if a small business helps develop a topic, there is, it's viewed as an unfair advantage to any other company that did not develop that topic. So all of our topics that we issue, they're all developed by government individuals. We, especially with Navware, we do not even allow our support contractor staff to develop these topics. They are government homegrown topics. However, you as a small business are more than welcome to have just an open discussion to give the topic authors, or those that do submit topics or post them, I should say, then let us know what's the quote state of the art or what's out there to maybe help us inspire some new topics. And that conversation kind of stops after that point, because of course that might lead to an unfair advantage. Think of it as like insider trading. But you're more than welcome to have discussions with us. So I always say, help us inspire it, and that's about it. Second thing is what I've alluded to earlier, is that if you've been awarded an SBIR or STTR award in the past, let us know what those awards are. We can easily reach out and do a sole source phase 2 award with those companies that have been or received a phase 1 or 2 award in the past, rather than us having to create a brand new topic. Third thing is, and we do get this a lot, we understand that, you know, Navy is very large, but I think it's really prudent if you are a small business just to kind of get a bearing about what we do. So take a look at we do have publicly accessible web pages. Navware has one in particular, and it really does drill down to like what the different program executive offices are, what those programs are for, just so you can understand whether or not that command might be a good home for you, or that you'd like to work with them. But it doesn't take that long to just go on a website and just take a look and see what we do. Especially on that slide where I showed the 8 different entities within the Navy. If you look, there's plenty of publicly accessible information for you to just check out and then come to one of us and say, hey, we'd like to do work with you because sort of fits this part of your website. And then last but not least, there are some things that you need to do if you've never participated in the program before to get registered so that you can apply. SAM.gov and being registered there is one of those things. And also, and I did allude to this earlier, do take advantage of subscribing to the mailing list the DoD SBIR STTR.mil website has, because I do think that's really important, just so you don't miss out on an opportunity to see some of our topics. And with that being said, I'm going to stop sharing. I think, let's see, I have a few questions that I highlighted internally that I could address over this webinar. The first one, I think, was if there's any new funding opportunities that I foresee coming out of Small Business Administration, or some of the other sister departments like NSF or NIH. What I would say is that I do know that SBA does have a program called FAST. I would recommend that you check out their website. As far as the other agencies or other departments, I'm not familiar with any other new funding opportunities besides that. And just so everyone knows, like the SBIR program is really kind of like what I said about the funding opportunities, about 3% of the total research and development budget. So there's plenty of other, I guess, funding opportunities that are out there. Aside from my little island that is SBIR and STTR, I'm not familiar with any other funding opportunities that might be out there, but definitely do know that there is plenty of them currently. It might be growing. Another question, I think I addressed this already, was the definition of a small business. Just so that you're aware, if our broad agency announcement, or the place that we actually post our topics, does have has a clear-cut explanation about eligibility requirements. So we do encourage you to take a look at those. I did summarize that in one of my slides, but it's also there, especially if you are venture capitalist funded. We actually post a blurb about that in our BAA. Another question that came in was what opportunities exist in the energy storage sector for small business owners. I would definitely encourage you to take a look at the Department of Energy. They have chock full of different opportunities available. They are a participant in the SBIR STTR program. So DOE is your best bet when it comes to that. Another one was, what is the success rate of SBIR versus previous years? And I'm trying to understand the question, so I'm going to do it in my way. I will say success is broadly viewed. I will say that our program is successful in terms of making sure companies go from phase 2 to phase 3. And within DoD, Navy leads that. Approximately, or at least 50% of our SBIR funded initiatives go to phase 3s, or they get transitioned. And I know 50% might not sound like a lot to someone just brand new to the government. For us in the government, it's actually amazing. I think the status was we invested at least $500 million for Navy, and we have about at least $1 billion in phase 3, or I guess transition contracts that's not SBIR funded. So that's a huge success to us. And I think it's keeping on growing for that. I think that might be all the questions. I would just say that I peruse that might think be relevant to my presentation, but I will stand by and give it up to maybe Adrian or Rihanna if they want to address any question.
Yeah, if anyone has any other questions, feel free to raise your hand or unmute and ask Shadi and Rihanna any questions that you've got about SBIR, STTR, or just in general about the Tech Bridge. And we'll give it a second just to see if anybody has any questions. In the meantime, I did drop quite a few of those links on the sidebar chat for both the listing of topics and also the login to get set up in SAM. And Susie also dropped in the link for information on the Tech Hub designation from EDA, the SC Nexus Consortium that is right now in the process of looking at topics for our phase 2 submission. So the link for that is also in the chat. And then the last item that I wanted to make sure everyone's aware of, in addition to just a plug of checking out what we've got going on our website, we will be hosting a second battery symposium. The first one this year in 2023 was sold out weeks before the event, which is amazing. So we are going to go bigger and better for 2024. We're hosting that on May 14th and 15th in Columbia at the USC Alumni Center. So that link is also in the chat. There is an active survey right now on that page that Susie linked for specific topics within the battery space that you would be interested in learning more about in a technical symposium. So if you have any interest in battery technology, to include manufacturing, recycling, logistics, maintenance, safety, and then getting into the real nitty-gritty details that I don't know enough about, hit that link and fill that survey out so we can start crafting our agenda for that event. And then final housekeeping things, the slides that you saw today will be provided along with the recording. And all of that will be available on our website. You'll get an email in the next week or so. And I think that is it. I don't see any other questions coming through on the chat. Rihanna, do you have any final follow-up thoughts?
I don't, but I just want to say thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here. If you think of anything after the webinar, shoot me an email and I'll get it into the hands of Shadi and Rihanna. And enjoy the rest of your Thursday, everyone. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.